Hey everybody, I'm a frog. Whether it's speedrunning or trying to beat it on Legendary without firing a single shot or whatever the heck this is, I've done a lot of videos on Halo CE. One of the comments you'll get when you do something like a speedrun video is something like, why are you even doing this? Why not just play the game normally? Well, the answer is, I've been playing Halo CE since I was a kid. I've beaten it playing normally more times than I can count, and speedrunning and learning crazy tricks is just a new way to experience the game and have fun with it. In other words, I wanted to learn how to speedrun Halo CE because I love it. But out of all the CE videos I've made, I've never really just talked about the game itself and all the things I like about it. It's one of my favorite games, period. So take a seat and grab yourself some orange juice while you're at it, because in this video, I'm just going to talk for insert video length here about what I think makes Halo CE a great game. Let's hop in. Oh, yeah, also I'm going to be spoiling the fuck out of the game, so there's your warning. Anyway, let's hop in. First and foremost, Halo CE is an action game. It's gotta be fun to play, and boy is it. After the bridge cutscene on Pillar of Autumn, you get a Magnum, and shortly thereafter an assault rifle, and you're introduced to CE's core gameplay. Whether you're mowing down enemies with the assault rifle or trying to get headshots with the Magnum, both of these guns are fun to shoot and try to kill aliens with. Those aliens are, in Pillar of Autumn at least, grunts, which are just cannon fodder, and elites, which are presented as your equals. The most impressive thing about the enemies here, even now but especially at the time, is how smart they are. Sometimes they'll rush you, sometimes they'll hang back. If you take an elite's shields down, they'll take cover and try to let them recharge. If you take out an elite, all the grunts in the area will panic. Their behavior changes based on the situation, both in regards to you and the fight itself, but also their surroundings and environment. This makes combat with the Covenant dynamic, especially after the game expands and you have more open environments and new weapons and the introduction of jackals, which everyone complains about jackal snipers in Halo 2, but CE jackals are freaking killing machines. On Legendary, a jackal can actually kill you with burst fire in less than 2 seconds. It is still 2001 enemy AI, so there are patterns, and the more you play the game, the more you figure out how enemies will behave if you do a specific thing, but regardless, the Covenant are a lot of fun to fight. This is also helped by the shields and health system. As opposed to not all, but a lot of older shooters, regenerating shields meant you didn't have to hide behind cover and try to take as little damage as possible. You had the ability to be more aggressive, and with elites also having regenerating shields, you were even incentivized to rush a bit. With also having health, this meant there were still consequences for playing badly and taking damage in earlier encounters. It does put you in a worse position until you can find a health pack, just not catastrophically so. With the weapons, it's a cliche thing to say, but they all have a place in the sandbox, at least in the campaign. The assault rifle is good against grunts and other unshielded enemies. The Magnum is your headshot weapon. Then your power weapons are the sniper, rockets, and shotgun. What a lot of new players who struggle on Legendary don't appreciate is how plasma weapons fit in. Basically, the assault rifle and Magnum do a lot of health damage, but are weaker against shields. On lower difficulties, you can get away with using them anyway, but on Legendary, you'll have a much harder time. Plasma weapons are the exact opposite, where they're strong against shields but do less damage to health. So when fighting the Covenant on Legendary, if you don't have a power weapon, that means you need a human weapon and a plasma weapon to stay balanced. Except the Needler, because the Needler is absolutely worthless in this game. The Flood are more one note. The best loadout for them is shotgun Magnum, no question or argument about it. And fighting them is also one note. They charge at you and you should shoot them with a shotgun. Story-wise, the Flood are great, and the initial impact of fighting them fantastic, but they start to wear out during the library. They're better in my opinion in the last 3 levels of the game, where they're one of 3 enemy factions you're fighting rather than the only one. It also makes weapon selection more interesting again. As far as the other 2 combat methods you have, namely melee and grenades, sticking an elite with a plasma grenade will never get old, and neither will backsmacking one. I think the game is better for having grenades and melees, but otherwise I don't have anything else to say. As I alluded to earlier, they do make it possible to beat the game on Legendary without shooting. The last element is the vehicles. I think in terms of the vehicles, this is probably the worst of all the Halo games. The Warthog is pretty good, splattering enemies just by tapping them is a lot of fun, but otherwise the vehicles, for lack of a better term, suck. The tank doesn't shoot straight, the Ghost handles weird, and the Banshee has barely any health. It doesn't affect the game too much though. In Halo and Silent Cartographer, I like the Warthog parts just fine, and in 2 Betrayals you fly around in a Banshee a bit, but it's just a small part of that very long level. The only level where a vehicle section drags it down a bit for me is Assault in the Control Room with the tank. The CE tank is not good in that section. I'm not a fan of. Overall, just a small complaint. But all this stuff combines to create as a real sandbox where encounters don't always play out the same way and you can approach them differently. You can find all sorts of strategies that work. Some obviously will work better than others, but you're still able to play however you want. Not only is that reinforced by the gameplay, but also the levels themselves. Besides the core gameplay, another essential element of the fun equation is the actual levels. You know, you could have the greatest gameplay ever, but if your whole game is just 10 levels that all look like this, it would get old after a bit. CE's first level, of course, is the Pillar of Autumn, named after your ship. It introduces you to the setting and the combat in the linear, easy-to-navigate corridors of your ship. If you're playing on easy or normal, it works even more explicitly as a tutorial by teaching you how to look up and down, explaining your shields, and through the combat sections, introducing elements like your flashlight, motion tracker, melee, and grenades. But it's not just a boring boring, teach you how to play the game level. It's fun in its own right, and it really gets CE off on the right foot. Once you get on the Halo ring, you start the second level, called Halo. My first time playing this as a kid, I was scared to walk out of the escape pod. But after you do, you're greeted by the new ring world you know nothing about, and the game opens up. You can cross the bridge right away, or you can run around on the side you're on, maybe check out the waterfall, and wait to fight the Covenant that are coming to search your life pod. In the next section, you're supposed to stay and help Marines, but one thing I like about this level and the game as a whole is that it doesn't punish you for going off on your own. If you want to, you can just keep on walking and progress on foot. There's no kill barrier or mission failed, we'll get them next time that comes up. You can beat the entire level without ever saving the Marines at the start and getting the Warthog. In the second half of the level, there's 3 different sections where you're supposed to save Marines, and you can hit them in whatever order you want. The game gives you the choice. Halo isn't my favorite level to play, but in terms of its importance to the game, especially to first-time players, I don't think it can be understated. It's followed by Truth and Reconciliation, which I love, but I'm well aware that a lot of people don't like it at all. I'm a big fan of the sniper rifle in CE, and I like that they built a whole mission around it. They give you a lot of extra ammo, plus there's tons scattered around throughout the whole level, so you never need to drop it for anything else. They give you a power weapon to use through the whole level. If you get good at sniping, that makes it a godsend. Inside the Covenant ship is where people think it starts to get overly repetitive, and I get it. I'm not going to say you're wrong if you think that, but I don't feel that way. This is my favorite mission in the game. After TNR, you get the Silent Cartographer, which is the Halo level. This is the one I'd show to a friend who's never played the game before. It starts off with the iconic beach fight before you're turned loose to explore the island. Again, you can handle this however you want. There's 2 facilities to go to. You're supposed to go to one, then a door closes and locks you out, so you turn around and go to a second to unlock the door, then go back to the first. Or if you know what to do, you can just start by going to the second. Or if you're a speedrunner, you can launch yourself through the door before it locks. The game does not punish you for doing this. Again, that is awesome. And once you're inside the facility, fighting your way to the bottom and then back up is just great. This is a top-tier Halo level. It's followed up by another top-tier level in Assault on the Control Room. Like I said a bit ago, I'm not a fan of the tank section, but otherwise AOTCR is POG, as the kids say. I really like the options this level gives you in terms of weapons. You're presented with everything. On the ground, there's a couple spots where you'll want to pick up rockets for vehicles, but otherwise you're given access to everything and have the freedom to go into the second half of the level with any loadout you want, minus the shotgun, which isn't introduced until the next level. I usually go Sniper Magnum. One complaint about AOTCR is repeated rooms, but I think that's really overblown. Each room has different enemies and you have different weapons going into them, so they all play out different. And the rooms aren't repeated as much as some seem to suggest when making this criticism. In terms of environments, so far in CE we've had a human ship environment, a grassy valley, a desert plateau and Covenant ship, a beach, and now a snowy canyon. The unique environments help make each of these levels stand out, and that's continued with the 6th level 343 Guilty Spark, which takes place in a swamp. Immediately upon playing this level as a kid, I knew it just felt different. And for those of you who have played CE before, you know it's because this is where the Flood is revealed and CE turns into a horror game. You don't have Cortana with you, it's just you by yourself in a spooky facility fighting space zombies. The atmosphere is awesome. There's entire videos just discussing every little detail of it, and trying to fight your way out of the maze-like facility is a lot of fun. Speaking of a lot of fun, the next level is the library, and it's anything but. Just kidding, I've actually grown to appreciate the library a bit. It's still too long and repetitive. Like I said with the Flood earlier, your entire strategy is just run through the hallway and shotgun Flood, which is fun, but the level is just too long, and it's compounded by the fact that the whole thing is just gray hallways. It's a fun level to speedrun, so it has that going for it, but yeah, not one of the highlights. 2 Betrayals and Keys are both backtrack levels through Assault in the Control Room and Truth and Reconciliation respectively, and this is where the game starts to lose some people. And I agree, the second half of CE is not as good as the first. What these levels do have going for them is the multi-faction fighting I mentioned earlier. Watching the Covenant or the Sentinels fight the Flood in these environments as you try to navigate through them is fun and a good twist on the gameplay. It's also neat to see how the Flood affect environments you've already seen, which is done better in Keys where the ship is just absolutely trashed. After 2 Betrayals and Keys, you're on to the last level, the Maw, which I think is a great level and the one where the backtracking works the best. Partly just because you haven't seen the Pillar of Autumn in a while, but it also does introduce more unique areas than in 2 Betrayals and Keys with the reactor room and everything after it. I also think the Pillar of Autumn is just a more interesting environment to see overrun by the Flood than the other 2. And it ends, of course, with the Warthog Run, which is one of the best video game endings ever. The levels leading up to the Maw may be a bit rocky, but the game closes out brilliantly. Overall, even with my complaints about the library and some of the backtracking stuff, I think CE has a great set of levels. And a big part of that too that I haven't talked about yet is a story that connects them all. To people who haven't played Halo and think it's just about mindlessly killing aliens, they probably don't realize just how important the stories of the games are. For me now, I don't really care about Halo lore or anything, but in the build-up to Halo 3's release, I was more excited than anything else just to find out what would happen to Master Chief and the Arbiter. And Halo 2's story gets a lot of praise, rightfully so, but I think the greatness of the original game on a story level is underrated a bit. Halo CE's story is perfect. Now, if you're looking for things to criticize, you can definitely nitpick it and point out stuff like, why doesn't Cortana tell Chief why he needs to save keys? Or, there's been a teleportation grid this entire time that Cortana hasn't been able to use prior to it becoming convenient for the plot that also won't be used again. But frankly, if you get caught up on CinemaSins level critiques like that, I think you're missing the forest for the trees. The reason why I say its story is perfect is because of how it succeeds in telling a self-contained story while also establishing a universe that could be expanded upon in future games, books, comics, TV shows. Well, maybe not that one, but you know what I mean. I've used this comparison before, but it's like the original Star Wars movie. In both cases, they didn't know if there would ever be a sequel, so they made sure to tell satisfying stories that didn't necessarily need sequels, but both also succeeded in creating interesting fictional universes that you could do a lot more with. And it starts with just the opening cutscene. You get pretty much all the setup you need. Your ship is approaching a mysterious ring world, maybe that's why it's called Halo. You're being chased by the Covenant, and along with being told directly that their technology is more advanced than humans, you can also infer just by their name that they're based around some kind of religion. In this cutscene and the second cutscene after you get to the bridge, things like Reach and the Cole Protocol are mentioned. Do we know exactly what those things are? No, but again, it's world building and it helps make this feel real. Also in the bridge cutscene, you get told why protecting Cortana is important and she goes inside your head and bada bing, bada boom, we're gaming. So you have all the reasons for caring that you need. There's this evil alien alliance called the Covenant that wants to kill all the humans. Rest in peace, Sam. That you need to stop, and you want to find out more about the mysterious ring world. And as you travel through valleys and naturally formed caves, a desert plateau, a beach, a snowy canyon, you learn things about it. The Covenant call it Halo. It's a significant object for their religion, and they think it's a weapon. There's also little things like Cortana telling you about the ring's ecosystem or inclement weather. Then of course, there's the big twist. Sergeant Johnson is invincible because no matter how many times I shoot him, he keeps coming back later. No, the flood reveal happens and the game has a huge tonal shift. And after learning that Halo, if activated, would destroy all life in the galaxy, the plot becomes about destroying it. This is where the game, story-wise, starts flailing a bit on some of the details, but again, I think it doesn't really matter. Throughout the story, you have motivation and reasons to care. There's the mystery element of wanting to learn about Halo, and you also have the characters. Cortana and 343 Guilty Spark are definitely the most interesting. Cortana has the most personality, and ironically, as an AI, feels the most like a real person. Guilty Spark is intriguing. While you fight through the library, he's telling you all about the flood and the ring and singing, talking to himself. And after it's revealed what the ring really does, he seamlessly transitions into the antagonist role. Really, the only other two characters are Captain Keyes and you, the Master Chief. Keyes works for what he is. He's not a deep, fleshed out character, but he doesn't need to be. He's supposed to be the heroic captain character, and that comes across well. Then with the Master Chief, he's not much of a character, but that's also intentional because they wanted players to easily see themselves as him. The voice acting for all of these characters, by the way, is top-notch. Last thing in the story, the cutscenes. Between voice lines I'm sure everyone watching this who's played the game can quote, to comedic moments, to things you could nitpick like Chief running away before he even knows what he's doing, they aren't the best, they're definitely dated, but they're charming. And I think that's how I can sum up Halo CE's story as a whole. Is it the deepest, most sophisticated, high-art story a video game has ever had? No. But for what CE is, it's absolutely perfect. One other thing I just want to mention real quick is the music composed by Marty O'Donnell and Michael Salvatore. I think Jason Jones put it best in the Halo 2 behind the scenes when he said Marty makes everything you do about twice as good. It may sound silly, but yeah, this game would not be as memorable or awesome without the music. It adds so much to the cutscenes, it adds to the levels, like when you first see the flood on two betrayals and Covenant Dance kicks in, or during the last run on TB when Undercover Night starts playing. Beautiful stuff. Marty is a fantastic composer, everyone knows this. Without him, the Halo games would not be nearly as awesome, and I don't know how big of a role Michael Salvatore had, but him too. Good job, Mike. I make fun of Halo CE a lot, and sometimes on my streams I'll say it sucks, usually because something bad happens that's 100% my fault, but all of it's out of love because CE is one of my favorite games ever. Is it flawless? No. Do any of the flaws ruin the experience for me? Absolutely not, and some of them, like the silly cutscene moments that you could use for nitpicks, I find endearing. I haven't talked at all about the impact on the gaming industry that CE had, or how it revolutionized console shooters and shooters generally, because it's been said a million times, but yeah, this was a really important game and I think it holds up well. The more I play it, the more I like it. The more crazy speedrun tricks and ways to break the game I learn, the more I like it. And all of this adds up to make Halo CE one of my favorite games of all time. So if you enjoyed this video, then you should click the video on screen to watch how I beat Halo CE on Legendary without shooting. And to close the video, I'll now say all the things I like about Halo CE's multiplayer.